While we turn the heat up on the pitch, Wiser turns the heat off at home.
Rob, Premiership Rugby Cup done and dusted for a couple of months now, and now it's back to the Premiership, and you've got a much stronger squad going to Bath this week.
Yeah, well, a bit stronger, that's for certain. We haven't got everybody available as yet, but that should happen in the next couple of weeks, which will obviously be good because obviously we're in a really exciting period. Obviously Bath and Saracens in the Premiership, and obviously Montpellier, Glasgow, our first Heineken Cup games, and then post Christmas, hopefully with the grandstand open, we've got Bristol here at home, and then Quinn. So really big fixtures for us, really important time of the year. Kind of feels like this is where we've got to put our foot down if we want to be involved in big games at the end of the season. So nice challenge for us.
You've said that in the past, that this period is quite often dictates where you'll be come the end of the season. Is that a message you've outlined to the boys this week?
Definitely, I think they're very aware of it. They're not daft. We're kind of clinging on to fourth spot in the Premiership, so we desperately need some Premiership points to keep ourselves on track to be in and around that top four, which is always our first goal. Well, to be fair, our first goal is avoiding relegation. That's obviously not the case this year. And then you fight for top six for your Heineken Cup, and then you fight for top four, and then if you can give yourself a chance at top two, you go for that. So we're kind of okay where we are, but we need to push on because we've had some frustratingly tight losses and a poor loss to London Irish that we kind of got to move on from. We've got a big challenge this weekend. I'll be honest with you, this is probably the last fixture I would have looked to have had, because it's another one of those fixtures where a team can just throw everything at us in a bit of a, and I'm not going to say a free hit, because Premiership games are never like that. But when you're a team that's fighting for your first win, and you've had a couple of weeks off, you can chuck an awful lot into it, because this is the game when we suddenly achieve that biggest thing of the season, that biggest celebration we can have is just 80 minutes away. And we've got to decide that that's how we want to play, that we're not going to let that happen to us. And I think that's why it's a tough challenge, but probably a good one, because we can face it or we can run away from it. And right here and now, I'm expecting us to face it.
Past experience tells us that going to Bath, though, is notoriously tough. We know better than anyone. It took us forever to win up there, didn't it?
Yeah, like I said, the last team in the Premiership for us to beat. But since then, we've gone pretty well against them. But having said that, as I've said before, you do need to turn up in Premiership games of rugby. Their last performance against Leicester in the Premiership, they're probably disappointed they didn't get a lot more out of that game. And we've got to make sure that we don't give them anything to fight for. It's going to be a challenge for us but if you want to have a big season and you want to win things, you've got to be able to knock challenges over. That should be what you want to do. You should be wanting to face, different situations, different challenges, and the bigger and better challenges you face and you come through, the bigger and the better team you get. That's kind of what we've got to be striving for.
The wider public will have seen how well your internationals have done, but in terms of the Premiership Cup, you would have seen some of the youngsters really put their hands up. Have you been impressed by them, and who's really stood out for you?
Yeah, well, obviously one of the old guys stood out for me. Ian Winton stood out. There's a guy he's been out of the first team for a little bit, but he wanted to fight and he wanted to challenge everything that was going on the field, and I really like that. I think when you really want to go, what characteristics do you want the club to be about? You want it to be about guys who want to fight for everything and really go after stuff, and I thought he did that really, really well, and probably showed a group of young players what expectations are. And then I think alongside that, I thought some of our young players stood out. Sam Maunder, I thought our young Welsh lads did really well. Ori Burrows and Daffy Jenkins, Dan John, I thought they were really good as well. And I think that's kind of what you really want to see. You do want to see an opportunity for some guys to start to push through and show where the potential is. Josh Hodge again, he had some bright moments as well, which is fantastic for us going forward. So there's a foundation element there, and we've just got to keep pushing forward with it.
You've talked in the past of using it as a stepping stone potentially to break into that first team. Also, you've got to look to the future and say, these are my next crop of players that I want to be a championship winning side with.
Yeah, and I think also, again, it was an interesting challenge for that group, because in the past that group's probably been a fair bit stronger, because you'll get amongst it, you'll get first team squad players who are kind of also trying to challenge to get into the first team, but maybe have had a period where they haven't broken through. So if you think about the guys who've been playing regularly in our first team, around the back five of the scrum in particular, who weren't there because they've been playing Premiership games, because we going into that game, we had into those games, if you go into Johnny Hill, Johnny Gray, Jacques Vermeulen, Dave Ewers, Sam Skinner, Sam Simmons, you start to go through all the guys unavailable, and who were unavailable in the Premiership running in, then you can see where your back five is getting challenged. And I think actually for us to stand up as well as we did for as long as we did in both games was very good on talking about kind of strength in depth in the future when that starts to thicken out again. So I'm very aware that there's some challenges there, but at the same time, that's why what the important thing is to show the qualities you've got, which is why I can really celebrate watching the guys who've really got out there and fought hard and scrapped for stuff, because that ultimately is what's almost more important than just showing a bit of skill. It's showing that fight and that desire to stay in the game, and that's very much what we just need to make sure we're bringing to the party on Friday.
Final one from me. Just a word on the Premiership, and I know it's strange to say Bath winless after this many games, but I guess it shows the strength and quality of the Premiership this year. It seems everyone's cranked up a notch.
Yeah, it's an interesting competition, and I kind of said at the start of the season, it was the thing that was interesting me more, and I know people talked a lot about the law changes. What was going to interest me more was see how no relegation was going to change the Premiership, and I still stand by it. I still think that's changed things the most, because I think there's been a noticeable shift and change in some teams and their ability to beat other teams, because that pressure over the shoulder of I've got to get something out of this game, we've got to get something out of this game, is not there. Now that's allowed some teams to really push on, and I think also it really allowed some teams, I think last season as well, the suspension of relegation really allowed some teams to shift, and I think the teams that kind of took that opportunity last season to shift have also looked different this season, and that's made a different challenge. So I think actually that shifted things a little bit more than people think, and it'll be interesting to see whether that maintains itself over the course of this season and into next season.